So, hey guys, welcome back to our channel Glitched Velocity. As always, I'm your host Wazahat, and in today's live stream, I'm going to teach how to use JavaScript with CopperCube 3D game engine. So, this video is more focused on the beginners who don't know how to code or who have never written any code or any script for CopperCube games. So, this is more focused on those individuals who have been dealing with some disabilities to learn things or something like that. So in today's video, we are going to learn basics of JavaScripts and how to implement JavaScript with CopperCube 3D game engine. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm thinking that I will create more videos, but first let me check if I'm audible and my live stream is working perfectly fine. And if I am doing something wrong, then I will fix it. So give me a moment. Let me just check if I am audible to you. So as I don't have a dual screen setup, so I'm gonna use my mobile device for checking the live stream. So let me just go to my channel. Okay, we are live. Welcome, fantastic Freddy. And yeah, so my voice is audible. So first of all, we need to download this Visual Studio Code in order to do our programming session or whatever we are going to write in our script. We are not going to use the inbuilt CopperCube editor, code editor. So let me just open my CopperCube editor. So this is how it looks like. And I'm sure that you are pretty much familiar with the UI or the user interface of this engine. So this is our 3D viewport here, and we have a scene graph explorer, which just shows our 3D scene nodes, objects, animated objects, overlays, billboards, sound nodes, everything else in here. Then we have properties section here, which will show the attributes or the properties of a scene node. Then we have materials tab here, which will show the textures and the type of materials assigned to our 3D objects. Then we have behaviors, which is just another properties for the action or how the object will behave in the game. So let me just open an example for this video. So we are going to use the default terrain example, or we can also use the physics example, but we are going to use the terrain example. All right, so my audio is coming. Yeah, I know that. Actually, you guys can also see your chats here. So you get to know that when I am receiving the chats because of the delay in the stream. And let me just turn off the scene post effects because I'm not using the professional or studio edition right now. So this is the free edition. And starting off the main topic of this conversation. So the basic of any programming language is data types, and data types are variables in CopperCube. So you already are familiar with variables in CopperCube, just like that. We go to the behaviors triggered by event when a key is pressed, do something. And for example, we are going to create a variable. Then we go to the action, variables and text, and we just set or change a variable according to our requirement. So in JavaScript, variables are same as setting variable in this CopperCube editor actions, set or change a variable. So we can specify whatever name we want to our variable. Then we can select the operation. For example, we want to set is going to be like defining a variable. And then we can say that if we want to add something or add a value to this variable, then we can use the add, then we can use subtract, divide, and divide by integer, multiply, and multiply by integer, and so on. Then we can also select the value type here, which is a value and a variable. Variable is why? Because we can also use string here. And so generally in JavaScript, a variable is something that holds any sort of data types. So let's say we want to create a variable that can hold numbers, strings, or anything else. So suppose variables are just like containers or boxes. Suppose I have 3 boxes and I can put whatever I want in those boxes. Like I can put water in one box and stones in second box, and I can put some sugar in third box, and then I just shuffle them in front of me. And now if I ask you to select the box with water, then you don't know which box contains the water. So that's why we have to name or put a label in front of variables, because variable acts like a box. We can put whatever we want in those boxes, either water, solid, liquid, or gases, it doesn't matter. So just like boxes, in variables we can put whatever data we want, like true, false, booleans, integers, strings, or whatever value we want. It can hold the scene nodes in CopperCube. It can hold the result of a function. So variable is more accessible in your game whenever you try to do something. For example, if a variable has a value, then do something. So you are going to use variables everywhere in your game, in your if and else statements, and by defining them. If you want to create an inventory, then you can create variables, and it is much easier to create variables by coding than by going in this behavior, then setting an action, then type in your name, then selecting the operation, then selecting the value type, and all those stuff. It is very simple to create a variable in JavaScript by writing the code down. And there is some methods or some a workflow in which you write your code, and there are some syntax that you have to follow. For example, in order to write a variable in JavaScript, first you have to write var. It is generally a short form of variable. Then you are going to label your variable, what you want to call your variable. So you are going to name your variable. For example, variable scene node. You can call it whatever you want. For the sake of example, we are going to use scene node. So we want to create a variable scene node, and we want it to hold an actual scene node of CopperCube game engine. So as you can see in this example, we have so many scene nodes. We have terrain, light, arcane house, sunset, skybox, water, and so on. We have so many trees like this, and we want to hold or we want to manipulate something in our scene. For example, we want to change property of this soldier one here, or we want to change the skybox, sunset skybox, or we want to change anything in our game. Let me just delete all these so that we can start from the zero. So we don't have any behavior or actions, and let's just create a simple cube mesh so that we can understand better what is variables and how we can use it while coding. So first of all, we need to grab this scene node cube mesh if we want to do any changes to this scene node. So how to do that? How we can grab that scene node? So first we create a variable, and then we give it a name so that we can know it is a box which holds the scene node. So we are creating a container that will grab or hold all the scene nodes. So you can also use, we are not going to in the detail that we we are going to use objects or arrays and all those things in this particular video, because we are going to learn from the beginning. So I want you to learn what are variables or the basic uses of variables. So we are not going into deep or advanced variables, or like more syntax for alternative syntax like global variables or let or const or all those things for the data types. We are going to simply use var for our variables. So simply write var for denoting that we are going to use a variable scene node. And then in CopperCube, we have some functions that we can check here in the official documentation, like ccb clone scene node, ccb get active camera, set active camera, get child scene node, and these are predefined functions that CopperCube provide us, and we can use these functions. And if you want, you can go to my website wazahat.github.io/neophyte, and then I have this under construction CopperCube JavaScript reference. So it will also lead you to the same commands that we have in here, but we have some color denoted or syntax highlighting color JavaScript here, and better example or explaining what parameters these functions will have, like name, and name is going to be a string. So you will be able to understand better what parameter these or what arguments this function will have. So ccb get scene node from name is the basic command that you are going to use in JavaScript. And Fantastic Freddy writes something. So can we make an object that follows the player with JavaScript? Yeah, sure. You can make an object that follows another object with JavaScript, and it is really easy, and I'm gonna show you in a moment. So first, let me show you. The main thing that you need to do is use this command, ccb get scene node from name, and this is the basic command that you are going to use in your game for now. In the next update, you will not necessarily need this command in the next update of CopperCube, because I have updated the API so that you can use the name directly. But right now, to grab a scene node or to let JavaScript know which scene node you are going to change, we have to use this command. So simply copy this, ccb get scene node from name, or you can, if you want, you can write it here, and I'm gonna paste it. So you can see that there are color difference here as well. So var is some sort of dark blue, then scene node is light blue, then ccb get scene node from name is in yellow, then name is in orange. You might have different color because of different theme, but this is to differentiate the elements of JavaScript. This is a function here, yellow is the function, and orange is a string. String means text, and var just is a syntax for variable, and light blue color is a scene node, is a name of the variables. So whenever we are going to use or write down our code, so that we don't get messed up. I know it is a bit confusing, but you have to learn this way, because I'm trying to explain everything, and English is not my native language, so things are getting worse, I know. But I believe if you learn this way, then you will be able to understand whatever I'm trying to write or whatever I'm trying to show you. So first, we need to grab the scene node of the object that we want to manipulate in our game. For example, we are going to change the cube mesh 1, and the command ccb get scene node from name, what it does is it searches the whole scene graph for a scene node with the name that we provide in the function here as an argument. So we can write the name here as the string in the ccb get scene node from name command, and then it will return the scene node if it is found, and it will return false or null if there is no scene node in our scene graph explorer with the name that we write in our code. So right now there is this code, variable scene node, ccb get scene node from name, and we have this string here which is name, and we know that there is no scene node in our scene graph explorer that has a name as name. So we have to change it to cube mesh 1, because our cube mesh object has the name cube mesh 1. And you need to be very precise about using uppercase and lowercase letter in JavaScript, because if you mess something, then it is not going to work or it will give you an error. So you have to make sure that you are writing correct uppercase and lowercase letters. So we have this code right now. We have defined our variable which holds the scene node, which is actually data type. So CCB gets scene node from name cube mesh 1, and we know that we have a cube mesh 1 in our scene graph explorer. And then what we are going to do is, in order to debug if our code is working or whatever we have written in the script is working or not, we use a simple command which is print. So what we are going to do is we are going to print the name or simply another variable or whatever we want. So before printing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another variable name, or you can say variable position, because we are already defining the name of the scene node. So what we want to do is we want to print the position of our cube mesh, which is right now -82 or something like that. I'm going to change it to 0 so that we know that our cube mesh is at 0, 0, 0. And we want to print it to the console so that we can understand that how variable works in CopperCube by holding data. Like it can hold the scene node, it can hold the properties of the scene node, it can hold true and false values, it can hold numbers, it can hold text values, and so many things. So what we are going to do is, now there is another command that we are going to use, which is CCB get scene node property. So first we have to call the node that we are going to use or manipulate. For example, CCB get scene node from a name. So once we have our scene node that we are going to manipulate or that we are going to extract the properties, then we are going to call another command that will extract the property. So it will allow us to get the property. We can get the position, we can get the rotation, we can get the scale, anything we want. So in our JavaScript documentation, we have this command CCB get scene node property. And if I click here, we have CCB get scene node property. Then we have two arguments here. First, we need to provide the scene node. Then we have to provide the property name that we want to access. So if I go here and I have to search a bit, where is CCB get scene node property? So here we have CCB get scene node property. We have node and property name as argument. So if you look here, the node is going to be the scene node whose property value should be returned, and the property name is going to be a string. And whenever we write string values in JavaScript, we use this quoted text. So this is going to be our string. Otherwise it will not work because it will treat it as a variable name or something else. So whenever you are writing a string, make sure that you are enclosing them within the quotes. So this is a string parameter, so we have to enclose them in a quotes. And the node here for the CCB get scene node property command, it is a scene node which is going to be a variable because there is no quotes or it is not a string. So we don't need to put quotes, or we don't need to enclose it in quotes, but the property name is going to be enclosed within the quotes. So string for the name of the property of a scene node whose value should be returned. For example, position, you can use position, rotation, scale, visibility, abstract position, and type of the scene node. And for animated scene nodes, we have animation, looping, frames per second, animation blending, blend time ms, and a lot of properties. So whatever you have in this attribute section for a scene node, that you can access from the properties, CCB get scene node property command. So what we are going to do is simply going to copy it, ccb get scene node property, and then paste it here. So now you can see the node is green and property name is again orange, because property name is going to be our actual property name. It is not going to simply property name. We have to rename it, and it is going to be encapsulated with these quotes because it is a string value. And now what we are going to print is we are going to print the position. So we have this property here, position. So we are going to change the property name to position, and we have to provide the scene node here. And as you can see in our code, we haven't used node anywhere. So how do we provide it a scene node? We know that previously we have created a variable that is scene node, which holds the actual cube mesh scene node. So we are going to use the name of that variable. So we are going to tell our command or our code that we are going to call the cube mesh scene node. So what we are going to do is we are going to simply write scene node here, and there is one more profit of using Visual Studio, that it will show you these these commands when as you type. So autocomplete your whatever you are writing. So we are going to use scene node, so you can simply click on it or press enter, then it will use the scene node. So first we created a variable scene node which holds the cube mesh. Then we created another variable position that holds the position of that scene node that we have defined earlier. So scene node is going to be our cube mesh 1. Then we are going to call its position, and now we are going to print the position. So what we have to do is we are going to print the variable position. So what we are going to write here is position. So it is the variable position, and we are going to print it. It is not necessary that you put this semicolon at the end of the line, but it is a good practice if you put semicolon at the end of the line. So this is a fully functional command for CopperCube 3D game engine. So what we have to do is simply copy this, and if you want to go here in scripting editor, show scripting window, let me just delete it and paste the command that we have just written. And if I execute it, then it will actually print the position of this cube mesh in the window. So it says 0, 0, 0, 0, which is our message log, or the property prints the position of our cube mesh. Now what we are going to do is we are going to change the position of our cube mesh on the x-axis. Now we actually don't know what is the position of our cube mesh, but we want to know what is the position of our cube mesh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply click execute button again, and now it prints 510.64267 on the x-axis. Then we have comma, then we have y-axis 0.0, then we have z-axis 0.0. So this is the first command that we have written in JavaScript, and it uses variables. And you can put anything that you like in variable. And it is not necessary that you use these CopperCube related commands. So for example, we want to print something that is not necessarily related to the CopperCube API. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a variable. First, we are going to create a variable for holding the value of numericals or for the numbers. Then we are going to do operations on them, like adding them and subtracting them. So I created a variable called x. You can create whatever name you want to give it. You can give whatever name you want to give it. So if you want something else other than x, you can name it, but it is better to write here. So let me just write it here. Variable x is equal to 10. And then we are going to create another variable in the next line. Variable y is equal to 8. And then we are going to create another variable z is equal to 5. And then what we are going to do is first we need to define these variables. So whenever I'm writing this var x is equal to 10, then I am defining the variable x is equal to 10. And if I have to use it again, then I don't necessarily need to write var. I can simply write x is equal to 7. Now it will change the value of x to 7 instead of 10. So whenever we are defining the variable for the very first time, we use var. Then we don't need to write var again and again. So it is just increase the workflow or speed of your work when you are writing codes. So you don't have to write var again and again. So you can define whatever you want. So what we are going to do right now is, first we want to create another variable and call it result. And we want the result to be sum of these two values. For example, we want the sum of x and y. So what we are going to do is, we are going to simply write x plus y. So what it will do is, it will create a variable named result, and it will put the value of 10 plus 8 in this result variable here. And now we are going to print the result. So we are going to use the function print, and we are going to write result here. And what it will do is, it will simply print 18 in the message log. So if I use this and if I execute it, it should print 18 here. As you can see, it printed 18. And if you want, you can subtract it. So x minus y, and it will print 2. It can also give you negative answer. So if I write y minus x, it will give us minus 2. And you can also use x plus y divided by z. And it will give us something like 11.600000. So you can do whatever calculation that you want here, and you can print that in the result. But as we are specifically talking about CopperCube game engine, we want to move or change the position or change the scale of our objects and manipulate the objects in the game. So how to do that? And how to use if and else conditions with the variables. So you know that variable can hold strings, numbers, booleans, or any type of data. And you know that we can use the CCB get scene node property to get the position of a scene node. There is also another command, CCB set scene node property. So that command allows us to change the property of a scene node. There are two commands. One is to get the property of a scene node. One is to set the property of a scene node. So all these properties can be accessible by the code here. And you can also change all these properties with the help of the code. So what we are going to do is, we are going back to our command here, which is CCB get scene node from name cube mesh 1. And we are going to use the same command variable position, but instead of getting the position, we are going to change the position. And you don't necessarily need to write the variable for changing the position of a scene node. So what we are going to do is, we are simply going to copy this command from here, CCB get scene node property, and I'm gonna simply paste it here and change it to CCB set scene node property. Instead of CCB get scene node property, we are going to use CCB set scene node property. And if I go here, then you will notice that CCB set scene node property uses 3 arguments instead of 2, while the CCB get scene node property uses 2 arguments, but CCB get scene node property, set scene node property uses 3 arguments. First is the node, which is going to be our scene node, just like the CCB get scene node property. We have our scene node here. Then second is going to be the property that we want to change property name, it is going to be a string value. So string for the name of the property of a scene node that need to be set, for example, position. So for example, if we want to change the position of our cube mesh with the coding, with the help of JavaScript, what we are going to do is we're going to write the second argument as a string. And as I said earlier, a string is going to be encapsulated with quotes. And the first one is our scene node, which is a variable that holds the scene node. Actual scene node is cube mesh 1. So we have scene node here. We have our property name, which is position, because we are going to change the position. Then the third argument is the value that we want to change, or that we want to set. So we already have a value here, like let's say 510.64267 for the x-axis and 0.0 for the y-axis, 0.0 for the z-axis. But now if we want to change this to something else, then we have to provide a new value that we want to assign to this property. So what we are going to do is we are going to simply put a comma here, and then we are going to write our new value that we want to give to our cube mesh. So let's say we want to change the position of our cube mesh to 10, 10, 10. So we want to change the position of cube mesh to the 10 on the x-axis, 10 on the y-axis, and 10 on the z-axis. And you don't necessarily need to write these in a string. So you don't have to encapsulate them in strings, because we know that we don't have to use strings for the value. So only the property name is going to be a string and need to be encapsulated in quotes. So you need to understand the difference between strings, numbers, and booleans. Booleans are simply true and false, so you can write them like true or false, like that. So you are not going to use them that much for now. But in this video, my main motive is to make you understand what are variables and how to use them to change the basic properties of the scene nodes, and how to grab a scene node and then manipulate it. So you want to change the position of a scene node. So we have CCB set scene node property, which is scene node position. And then we are not going to print anything, so we can leave that command. And let's just copy this and paste in the scripting window here. And as you know that we are not getting the property of the scene node, because it is not usable in this case. So we are going to remove that. So what we have is we have two lines of code. First, we are using a variable, which is scene node, that holds our cube mesh 1 as an object. Then we are simply using the command or the function that allows us to change the property or set the scene node property. Then we have provided the scene node or variable that we have created that holds the cube mesh 1, that allows us to use the object. And then we also provided a string value. As you know that a string is also encapsulated, always encapsulated in quotes. So we are using this in quotes. Then we are using our value that we want to use for the position, new value that we want to change in the position of this cube mesh. So right now the position of the cube mesh is 510 on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis and z-axis. So as soon as I click this execute button, you will notice that our cube mesh has moved from there to here. And now its position has been changed to 10, 10, and 10. You know, we haven't used anything. We haven't done anything. We have simply copy pasted some API commands from the documentation, and we simply created one variable, scene node, that holds the cube mesh 1, that holds the object cube mesh 1. And we have used two commands from the API, which is CCB get scene node from name and CCB set scene node property. And if you go to the website, it is pretty much easily understandable that what parameters or what arguments this function uses and how to use them. Wherever this says it is going to be a string, simply encapsulate it in a string value or in a quotes. And if you don't know how to use or how to write coding, simply copy paste these by going here and copying it and pasting it. You will also get these sample commands or sample scripts here. For each command, I have written these scripts. For example, if I go to the first command, which is ccb get scene node from name, then you will notice that we have var variable s denotes for scene node. You can write scene node full here or whatever name you want for your variable. Then we have ccb get scene node from name, which is the command. Then we have defined the name, which is cube mesh 1. You can change it according to your scene node name. For example, if your scene node name is something else, like it is cube, and if now I execute this command which we have written, then it will not work. It will say could not set property provided scene node is invalid, because our node name is cube and we have used cube mesh 1 here. So we have to change this cube mesh 1 to cube as well in order to execute this command. So now we have the message log empty and our position of cube mesh is already at 10 10 10, so we are not seeing any visible changes. So if I move it here again, which is -444, and if I execute, then you will see that our cube mesh has moved again here on the 10 10 10 position. So this is a pretty basic example of variables in CopperCube, and let's just move on. And there are some other examples, but they are some advanced, so we are not going to deal with that for now. My motive is to make you understand the basic uses of variables and not that much of this JavaScript or advanced scripting. So this is targeted to absolute beginners, but maybe my English will make it more complicated than easier for you to understand this, but I want to explain it in a way that you can understand it much better. So as you can see, the color syntax highlighting helps very much. You can easily distinguish between the functions, between the variable names, and between the string values. So you can see we have orange for string values, we have light blue for variable names. And let me just clear all this out, or we just simply create a new file here for our next command. So you know how to change the position or set the position or set property of a scene node. Let's say we want to change the scale of this cube mesh. Right now the scale of the cube mesh is 1.0 1.0 1.0, and we simply want to change the size of the cube mesh to something like 10. So what you have to do is simply rename this position to scale. Wait, I have this. There is an issue while writing here because I have this plugin here that uses Shift plus S, which is for creating a skybox. So whenever I write S by pressing Shift and S, it is going to execute that plugin instead of writing down in the scripting panel. So I'm gonna use caps lock and S, then scale. So now if I execute it, then we already have the scene node variable which holds the cube, because we have cube name for our cube mesh. We have already provided it as scene node here because this ccb set scene node property uses a scene node, and then we have a property name scale because it actually has a scale as the property name. Then we are going to change it to 10 for x-axis, 10 for y-axis, 10 for z-axis. And if I execute it, then you will notice our cube mesh has become enlarged. So if I move it here, and you will see we have 10 10 10 for the scale of our cube mesh. Also, it is not necessary that you use these codes in the scripting window. If you want, you can use this in your game. For example, if I copy it from here, and let's just scale down our cube mesh to 1, comma 1 comma 1 again. So we have our cube mesh here, and we can see that it is very small. And now we can go to behavior, and behavior is triggered by events. When a key is pressed, do something. Go to key press F, and then simply go to execute JavaScript action. And in the JavaScript section, we can simply paste our command that we have written. And if I test the application now by pressing Ctrl F10, you can see we have our cube mesh there. And if I press F, then this cube mesh is going to become larger by 10% or by the value of 10. So if I press F, then you can see it has enlarged. So this is how you can change the properties and set the properties of an object in your game. And you can also, so what is the role of this CCB get scene node property? You might be wondering what is the role of this CCB get scene node property command. And this is pretty useful whenever you want to change the position of an object. Let's say we have a sphere here. You can see we have a sphere here, and let's just move it to 0 by 0 by 0 and it to 100. So we have a sphere mesh here and we have a cube mesh here. Now let's say we want to change the position of our cube mesh to the position of our sphere mesh. So how do we do that? So in our mind, we have to build an algorithm or a logic that we want to change the position of this cube mesh to the position of sphere. So what we will first do is, first we will get the position of this sphere mesh, because we don't know in our game where is this sphere mesh. It can be on 0 by 0 by 0, or it can be here, up here, or it can be here. So we don't exactly know the values. So where then this command is going to play the role. So CCB get scene node property. First we are going to get the property of the sphere mesh, and then what we are going to do is, as we know that variables hold everything, so we have position, and position will hold the data or the value of the position of the sphere mesh. What we are going to do is, first we are going to create another variable for the sphere mesh. So you know that we have created a variable scene node already. So what we are going to do is, if we already have a variable, then we can't use the same name for another variable. So I'm going to call it scene node 2. So first is going to be our cube mesh 1, and let me just change it to cube because we have cube in the name for our cube mesh, and let me just use sphere for the sphere mesh. And then we have scene node 2, and we are going to call it sphere instead of cube mesh 1. So simply call it sphere. So we know that variable holds the value of the object. So first we are going to hold the cube. Then in the scene node 2, we have created another variable scene node 2, and it is going to hold the sphere. And now we need to grab the value of the sphere or the position of the sphere. So we need to know what is the position of our sphere. Then we are going to move our cube mesh to that position. So we need to know the position of our sphere, and sphere is in the scene node 2. So we have to write here 2. So it becomes scene node 2. CCB get scene node property is going to be scene node 2. And we are going to grab the position. So we are not changing the property because it is already position. So in order to translate this code here, first we are getting the cube mesh as scene node 1. And then we are going to grab the sphere mesh as scene node 2. Then we are going to grab the position of the sphere mesh. You can write position sphere here to make it more understandable. You can use whatever variable name you want. It is up to you. You can simply use PS or P_s, something like that, so that you will be able to understand what you have written here. So position sphere is going to be CCB get scene node property, scene node 2, which is our sphere mesh. And we are going to grab the position property. And the position sphere variable will hold that property values. And then we are going to change the position of our cube mesh to the position of our sphere. So what we are going to do is, instead of writing this 10, 10, 10 here, we can simply write the name of the variable that holds the position of the sphere mesh. So we are going to simply write here position underscore sphere. And if I copy paste this command in our scripting window in CopperCube, then you will notice that our cube mesh will be going to change the position to that of the sphere mesh if I execute the command. And you can see our cube mesh has moved towards the sphere mesh. So they both have the same position now. So our cube mesh is at 0, 0 and 100, and our sphere mesh is also on 0, 0, 100. And just like I have told you earlier, hello Blue, hello, how are you doing? So just like I told you earlier, you can also use this in the execute JavaScript action. So simply copy it, and let me just change the position of our sphere mesh. So we have our sphere mesh here, and in our execute JavaScript command, we are going to paste this script and hit OK. Hit OK again. If I test the application as Windows application, wait a second, I'm unable to see. So we have our cube mesh there, and we have our sphere mesh. And if I press F, then our cube mesh will come to the position of our sphere mesh. So if I press F, and now you can see our cube mesh and the sphere mesh are on the same position. You can see the sphere inside this cube mesh because it is much smaller than the cube mesh. Thanks to you too, because with your support and kind feedback, this motivates me to create more stuff for the CopperCube community. And I'm trying my best to explain this JavaScript stuff for the beginners so that you guys don't have to worry about learning that advanced stuff or mess up with the arrays and all the functions and all those stuff, so that you can basically do simple stuff, or you don't have to ask everybody how to do that, how to do this in CopperCube, so that you can create your own stuff, your own plugins, your own extensions in CopperCube. So I'm trying to make you guys understand slowly, but definitely you will learn something with this tutorial. And as you go to my website, there are so many examples: CCB set active camera, CCB get active camera, and you can change the camera. There is command or code for all the examples that I have written till now. So we have so many examples, and yeah, some of them are similar to the official documentation, and some of them are just customized commands or codes. So now what we have done here is we have learned how to grab a scene node from the scene graph explorer in the form of variables, and how to manipulate them by getting the properties and by setting the properties. So these are two simple commands: getting the property and setting the property. Actually, these are three commands, and you are getting the scene node as well, no? So we are using three commands: CCB get scene node from name, CCB get scene node property, and CCB get set scene node property. If the same as normal JavaScript, I recommend learning stuff with Mimo. I have learned my web development and Python from there. Yeah, it is similar to the same. It is exactly the same JavaScript, but with the API commands of CopperCube, and it is actually a bit harder for the members of CopperCube community to understand advanced JavaScript. You can use W3 schools or other tutorials for advanced JavaScript. I'm more focused on how to do things or how to make yourself comfortable with CopperCube and the basic of JavaScript. So this tutorial is not aimed for, advanced coders or people who know how to code in other languages, because if you know how to code in other languages, then it is much easier to learn JavaScript for you. And if you don't know, and if you are having some sort of disability with the learning, for example, some of the CopperCube community members have this dyslexia or something like that, they are slow learner or they don't know how to code, even if they read so many articles about coding and if they have watched so many videos. So that's why I'm repeating my stuff again and again, so that they will probably understand something that how to use these variables. That's why I'm not discussing about the types of variables much more in detail, and I'm focusing more on stuff that you can do with the variables and the CopperCube scene nodes for now. So I have already told the 3 commands, and now let's just move on to the if and else statement. So that if a variable has a value, then we want to change the position, and if that variable has no value, then we don't want to change the position of our cube mesh. So we have our cube mesh here, we have our sphere mesh here as the variable scene node and scene node 2. Let me just change it to scene node 1 so that we can understand much better that scene node 1 is our cube and scene node 2 is our sphere mesh. You can also, if you want, you can simply write cube here, and you can write down sphere here, but for this so that it won't make confusion and won't mess up with the name of the 3D scene node and the name of the variable, it is better to use a different name for the variable than the actual 3D scene node name. So now just move on to the if and else condition. So what we are going to do is we are going to simply write if, then we have to open the brackets, and then we have to write our condition. So in order to use if and else statement in JavaScript, first you have to write if, then you have to write your condition. For example, I want a variable scene node 2 to be at position 0, 0, 0. So if our sphere is at 0, 0, 0, then only change the position of our cube mesh when we press F or when we press something else. Otherwise, let the cube mesh remains on its own position. So let's say if position underscore sphere, and then we have to use dual is equal to sign instead of single is equal to sign whenever we are using operators. So if you are defining the condition here, then you have to use double operators. So position sphere is equal to 0, 0, 0. And it might not work because CopperCube uses vector 3D for the position, but it may also work because sometimes it works as numbers, sometimes it works as strings. So you have to check if it works or not, but I'm sure it will work. Position sphere is equal to 0, 0, 0. Then we are going to open curly braces and write our result or the actual condition that we want to do. So we have this operator here, position sphere is equal to 0, 0, 0. And then we are going to change the position of our cube mesh to the position of our sphere. So I'm going to cut it from here and move it here. So we have our condition, that is CCB set scene node property, scene node, which is I'm going to change it to scene node 1 because otherwise it will give us error because we have changed it to scene node 1. So we are changing the position of our cube, which is scene node 1, to the position of our sphere only if the position of a sphere is at 0, 0, 0. Otherwise it will do nothing. So let's just copy it and paste it here and just execute it. And you can see if I am executing it, it is doing nothing because our sphere mesh is not at 0, 0, 0. It is at 0, 0, 2.0, something like that. And let's just change it to 0, 0, 0. And now if I execute the code, then our cube mesh should move to the position of our sphere mesh. So if I execute it, it is still not moving. And this is maybe due to 0, 0, 0. Because as I said, it might work and it may not work because CopperCube uses vector 3D for the position sphere. So whenever we are using position sphere as 0, 0, 0, it is not going to work. So what we have to do is, you can also access the position on the basis of the axis. So if you want to access only the x position, and if you want to compare the x position only, you can simply put a dot and x. So we have position sphere, which gives us the position of the sphere, and we want to compare the x position only because vector 3D might be sort of complicated for this video because you might not understand that much in just a single video. So I'm going to restrict vector 3D as it is not that much necessary for now. So if position sphere dot x is equal to 0, dot x is going to be the x-axis of the position, which is 0.0. And now if I copy the code from here and paste it, so position sphere dot x is equal to 0, then only the cube will move to the sphere. So if I execute it, and the cube just move to the sphere, and let's just move it here. And as you can see, if I move the sphere mesh on the x-axis, now we don't have 0 on the x-axis. So if I execute the code, the cube mesh will not move towards the sphere because we have a condition that is not going to fulfill because our sphere mesh is not on the 0 on the x-axis. So if I change it back to the 0 on the x-axis, so it is now 0 on the x-axis, and if I execute the code, then cube mesh will move to the sphere mesh. So now what? If I have skipped the vector 3D method, so how do you deal with other values? So in order to deal with other values, what you can do is you can specify multiple conditions for the position sphere. So simply copy it and paste it here. If position sphere dot x is equal to 0, or what you can do, just let me just make it much more simpler. What you can do is you can simply put the symbol here, vertical lines, 2 vertical lines, which means or, yeah. And I think it is going to be a bit complicated because we are going to use this. So what we are going to do is we are going to simply copy this and paste it here. And instead of position sphere dot x, we are going to use y. And then we are going to use position sphere z. So now it is the same as using vector 3D because we are checking with each axis. So position sphere x is equal to 0, or position sphere dot y is equal to 0, or the position of sphere dot z is equal to 0, then only change the CCB set scene node property of our scene node 1 to the position of our position sphere. So you can change the position of our sphere to anywhere else, and if it is not 0, on any of the axis. So if it is 0 on the y-axis, the cube mesh is going to change the position. If it is 0 on the x-axis, the cube mesh is going to change the position. But if it is not 0 on any of the axis, then the cube mesh is not going to change the position. Now let's just change the z-axis to 0 and see if the cube mesh move to the position of this sphere mesh. It is not moving because we haven't updated our code in the scripting window. So in our scripting window, we have to update it by copy pasting the code here. So if I execute, then the cube mesh will move. So let's just move it here. And if I execute it, the cube mesh will not move to the sphere mesh because we don't have 0 on any of the axis. So if we have 0 on any of the axis, then it will move to the sphere mesh. And you can also change these vertical lines to AND. Instead of OR, you can specify AND condition. So you have to use the AND symbol 2 times if you want to use AND here. So now if the position sphere dot x is equal to 0 and the position sphere dot y is equal to 0 and the position sphere dot z is equal to 0, then only it will move to the cube mesh. So if any of the position is 0 but z-axis is not 0 and x-axis is not 0 but y-axis is 0, then it is not going to move to the sphere mesh. So the cube mesh is not going to move towards the sphere mesh. If one of the axis is 0, then it is not going to move towards the sphere mesh. So it is necessary that the sphere mesh is at 0, 0, 0 on every axis. So if I execute it, the cube mesh will move towards the sphere mesh. Otherwise, it won't move. It doesn't matter how many times I click on the execute button, it will not move and it won't show me any error. So now what I want to do is I want to do something else if this condition doesn't get fulfilled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write another condition here or another statement here, which is the else statement. And then I'm going to open curly braces. So you don't have to use brackets, normal brackets. You have to use curly braces whenever you are writing the else condition. So now we want to print something that our sphere mesh. So we are going to print the text. So as I said earlier, whenever you are using text, you need to make sure that you are using the quotes or encapsulate the text in the quotes. So we are going to print a warning message that, your sphere mesh is not at position 0, 0, 0. And this is what we are going to do. And then we are going to simply copy this and paste it in our scripting panel. So if our sphere mesh is at 0, then our cube mesh is going to change the position towards the sphere mesh, to the position of the sphere mesh. Otherwise, it will print this in the debug panel or the console log or the log window that our sphere mesh is not at position 0, 0, 0. So if I execute it, it moves to the sphere mesh position because our sphere is at 0, 0, 0. And now if I change the position of the sphere to something else, and if I execute it, wait a second, it is not printing anything else. Print your sphere mesh is not at position 0, 0, 0. I think there is some mistake here. It should print your sphere mesh is not at position 0, 0. Let me just check it. So we have this condition here, if, and then we are simply using the else, and we are printing our debug command, and your sphere mesh is not at, maybe it is not printing in the log window, and it should just print in the game for the debug panel. Let's just check it there, because to me the code seems right. And if I test the application, wait, where is our cube mesh? Here is our cube mesh, and where is our sphere mesh? I'm unable to see the sphere mesh. So they are already at the same position. Because we have this or condition. It make much more sense because we have this or condition. So we have to use and here. So I made a mistake here because we have changed the code to and in our scripting window here directly instead of the VS code. And when I wrote this else condition, I haven't changed this to and here. So we have to change it to and instead of or. And now if I simply execute it, it says your sphere mesh is not at position 0, 0, 0, because previously one of the condition is fulfilling. So either one of the x is on the 0. So as we can see, x on the 0 and y is on the 0. So it was not working previously, and now we have changed the condition to and instead of or. So it specifically needs the sphere mesh to be at 0, 0, 0. So now we can execute it and it will show the error. Your sphere mesh is not at position 0, 0, 0. So this is the basic of how you can use if and else conditions and how you can use variables. And hopefully you will understand this. And in the next video, we will continue this session and we will do some more stuff, and we will also learn something new and something advanced. I hope you enjoy the video. It's been 1 hour, so I have to close the live stream. And I'm also thinking to create more videos on CopperCube related to the game developing instead of just showcasing my extensions and my plugins and all those stuff. So I want to show you guys how to create games and how to do stuff that will help you and how to do it in proper way. For example, many of you guys don't know the uses of this very beautiful property of CopperCube. So if you create a terrain, I have seen many of the videos where users simply create terrain. Let me just delete it. I want to create a flat terrain. So select it flat, and then we are not going to create any trees and we are not going to create any grass. So we have this flat terrain. And what I want to do here is, let's say I want to distribute this, object. This is a cube mesh. I have seen a video tutorial recently posted by Niven Hedinger, and maybe he is showcasing the more control for the placement of your objects in the scene so that you can control each and every object according to yourself. But there are so many commands that people doesn't use. I'm not specifically talking about Niven. He probably knows how to use this command, but I'm saying that I have seen his video tutorial recently, and he's placing manually the trees and rotating them. So I thought that you can simply use the distribute terrain. So you go to modify selection, and there is distribute over terrain, and this will distribute multiple instances of a mesh across the terrain. And there is specifically one thing here, that you can only move or distribute the terrain which is animated node, because you have to create an instance of a node. Animated nodes create instance of previous nodes instead of creating a new mesh. So what we have to do is we go to simply modify selection, and this is where we use clone as static animated mesh. And once you have cloned this mesh, and now what you have to do, all you have to do is simply right click here and create an instance. So instanced objects are much lighter and give you performance, much more performance than the static object with the collision geometry. So let's say you have so many cube meshes or so many trees in your game and you want to distribute them on the terrain without affecting the performance. Then what you can do is you can simply create an instance of static animated mesh, and you can also have collision as well. So if you go here, right click on the animation editor window, then you have set static collision box, and you can put whatever value you want. For example, 10, 10, 10, and let's say -10, -10, and -10. I'm not sure if it is going to perfectly fit into this cube mesh, but I think it does. It is a bit bigger, so let's just change it to 5. I think we should just change it to 5 instead of 10. So we can change it to 5. It depends on the scale of your object, so you have to make sure that it is. So now it is perfectly fine. So it covers the whole cube mesh. So the collision will occur with the whole cube mesh, and it is, as you can see, it is an animated mesh. It is not a static mesh anymore, and the collision is much faster and the performance will be much faster for the animated objects. And now what you can do is, let me just delete the original cube mesh. And before letting you know about the distribution of the object on the terrain, I want to tell you about how to use this static collision box properties. So what it does is it calculates the position from the middle or the pivot point of your object. So 5 on the positive x-axis and 5 on the negative x-axis. As we know that whenever we create a cube mesh, I hate this system of CopperCube, because if you have any windows open, then you can't click on anything else, so you have to close it. So we know that we have 5, 5, 5 and -5, -5, -5, and I'm going to show you why. Because when we create a cube mesh, we know that it has a size of 10. So in the middle is 0. If you select this and the pivot it as the center of the cube mesh, then if you go 5 from here to the negative or positive of x-axis, so if you go here to the negative of x-axis, then you have to use -5. Then you have 5 on the positive x-axis, then you have 5 on the z-axis positive, and 5 on the negative z-axis, and 5 on the y-axis, and 5 on the negative y-axis. So you have to use -5, -5, -5, and 5, 5, 5. And it doesn't matter if you simply change the occurrence. So if you use 5, 5, 5 here, and -5, -5, and -5 here. So it doesn't matter if you use the negative values first or the positive values first. If you simply hit OK, it will be the same result. It will give you the same result. So sometime it will you have to make sure that you are using the correct positive and negative values depending on the shape of your object. So right now it is a cube which has all the sides are equal. So it doesn't matter if you use negative values first or positive values first. And then you go to simply right click on the cube mesh and go to modify selection, and now go to distribute over terrain, and it will allow you to provide the percentage that you want to cover for the terrain. Let's say we want to cover the 100% area of the terrain, then we can specify 100 here. And let's say we want to cover the 10% area of the terrain, then we can specify 10. For now, I'm using 50 because we want to cover the 50% of the area of the terrain. And if I hit OK, then you will notice our terrain has so many cube meshes at just single click, and they are randomly assigned, and yeah, they are rotated. You don't have to manually rotate them. You don't have to manually align them in a line or something like that. So it is really good if you are creating trees and grass for your terrain and all those stuff. So there are so many other things as well that I will be able to show you or make you guys learn. So let me just delete it. And you can see our terrain has these as children. So you don't have to worry about if you have to manually move them under the terrain. So now if I create a camera so that we can check if we actually collide with them or not. So we are going to create a camera, and we are going to create a first person shooter camera. It doesn't matter wherever we can create it. So you can see, or we are colliding with the boxes because the camera goes up a little bit up and then down. So it looks like we are walking on some stairs. That means we are colliding with the terrain, or we can say the cube meshes. But there is one issue here. And the issue is that they are positioned with the pivot point. So whenever you are distributing an object according to the pivot point, what you can do is you can simply select them, go to polygon editing, then move. And as you can see, we can't move them because they are animated object. They are not static anymore. So you will not be able to move them. But if you have, let me just simply delete all these cube meshes by deleting the terrain, and let me just create a flat terrain again. So we have a flat terrain, and we are going to create a cube mesh. So it is our static cube mesh. And what we are going to do is we are going to go to the polygon editing tools, and we simply select move. And we can move the object to a little bit up. Or what we can do is we can simply create an empty node. And let me just move this empty node here. Copy the position of the cube mesh, then paste it to the sphere mesh, and then move it here so that it will be at the bottom of the cube mesh. And now if I go to polygon editing tools and then merge selected mesh with another mesh, and we are going to select our cube mesh. And now you can see our cube mesh has this pivot point at here, and it is not actually at the correct position, but this is to show you how to use it. So, and now if I create the instance and as a static animated meshes, clone as a static animated mesh, then you can use it and then create an instance, and then simply modify selection, distribute over terrain, and let's just say 100 this time. And you can see now our cube meshes are a bit up from the ground. So they are not completely below the ground or in between the ground. They are above the surface. There are so many plugins available that you can use to change the pivot point and do your stuff. So this is just a reference video to showcase you that how you can easily distribute objects on your terrain. It is not specifically related to the trees, but you can do this for all of your objects. It doesn't matter. So that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the video or the live stream and it will help you a bit. See you next time in the next video. Till then, bye-bye. Hasta la vista. Take care. And I don't know what was the hotkey for, stopping this live stream. I have to manually close the live stream. So I'm going to end it now. I hope it doesn't end earlier, or let me just check my YouTube channel. So I'm sure that nothing gets messed up. I hope it doesn't end earlier. So yeah, or